streaming is on.
I think live streaming is on.
I think so.
All right, we all need to get started. Brent, where'd he go?
He's frozen.
Well, in his absence, I guess I'll go ahead and get started. Let me pull up the presentation. Give me a second. Been so long since I've done this, I've forgotten how to start screen sharing. Let's see if I do a... Select the tab to share. Oh, well, come on here. All right, do you guys see a WNC-LUG meeting?
Yes.
See, okay.
Yeah.
Let me go ahead and open up the presentation. And here we are. All right, do you see the OpenMediaVault 6?
No, I just see your email.
Yeah, we just see the group.
Share this tab instead. Okay, how about now?
That works.
Yep.
OpenMediaVault 6.
All right. Looks like they've changed the Jitsi platform now. You have to share a particular tab. I never noticed that before, but that's okay. All right. Well, today is the 2nd of March, and it is 2024. My name is Dan Calloway, for those that might be viewing this outside. And this presentation is on OpenMediaVault version 6. I started OpenMediaVault when it was version 5 early on, and now it's version 6. It's a little, I think, better than it was. And it is my go-to open network attached storage solution. And I really like it. So let me go ahead and start this up. Okay, so here's the website for it. It is a secure site at www.openmediavault.org. So you can go there. I won't go there now. And find out about everything you'd like to know about OpenMediaVault. I'm afraid to ask. The licensing on OpenMediaVault, it is open source. It is free software. You can redistribute it and modify it under the terms of the GNU GPL version 3, published by the Free Software Foundation. The documentation, by the way, is licensed under the Creative Commons Attribution Share-alike 3.0 cc.by-sa-3.0 3.0 if you want to take a look at it. All right, so well, here we'll take a look at it. Forgot to add this thing in here. The Creative Commons License Attribution Share-alike allows you the freedom to use and perform the work. It also allows the freedom to study the work and apply the information. The freedom to redistribute copies of the software. Freedom to distribute derivative works of the software as well. You cannot apply DRM or TPM to it. The attribution, you must give proper attribution to the author and retain the license notice for OpenMediaVault, and it is copyleft, not copyright. Okay, so let's move on. All right, some background information on OpenMediaVault. OpenMediaVault is, it's not a fork of FreeNAS. You might think it is, but it's not. FreeNAS is based on FreeBSD. OpenMediaVault is not. And really not sure what it's based on. I know it can run easily on Debian, and that's what I run it on. Or it can run as a standalone using an ISO. It is an open source network attached storage solution. Home users can set it up, and it's very easily for them to do that. Very quickly set it up. It probably took me all of 5 minutes to 10 minutes to really set it up once I got it installed. And I'll talk about the installation here in a moment. It's applicable also not only to home users, but to small and medium-sized businesses. It can be installed on a USB stick with flash memory plug-in. You must have the flash memory plug-in installed in order for it to run on a USB stick, though. And the HTTP engine for OpenMediaVault 6 is Nginx, not Apache. All right, so here's a little chart. I did a comparison between OpenMediaVault and TrueNAS. And on the left is OpenMediaVault, on the right TrueNAS. OpenMediaVault is built on Debian Linux. I'm running Debian 11 on the Raspberry Pi, which is really Raspbian. I think it's Raspberry Pi OS, which is a derivative of Debian 11. The TrueNAS, however, comes in two different versions. It's got the core, which is built on OpenCFS, and Leander would like that. And the scale is built on Debian Linux. The OpenMediaVault and TrueNAS are both free and open software. And OpenMediaVault, you can have the file systems of ext4, extended4, XFS, BTRFS, and it supports ZFS, but not natively. TrueNAS does support ZFS natively. That's the big a plus mark for TrueNAS. OpenMediaVault runs on single board computers such as the Raspberry Pi. TrueNAS, however, runs on x86-64 computer platform. I don't think you can install it on a Raspberry Pi. Could be wrong about that. Prerequisites for running OpenMediaVault is for the CPU, you can have any x86-64 or ARM-based compatible processor. You have to have 1 gigabyte of minimum capacity RAM, and the system hard drive has to be a minimum of 4 gigabytes in capacity and or equal to the system RAM in size, whichever is greater. And the data drive needs to be set up for the user. The data drive can be set up for the needs of the user. It supports system drives, including spinning hard drives, SD cards, 40 or 44 pin IDE disk on module DOM devices, compact flash CF cards, USB thumb drives, and system drives do not support drive storage. So whatever the system drive is that you've got OpenMediaVault installed on, you cannot also use it as a storage drive. I'm running spinning hard drives, 2-3 terabyte spinning hard drives, courtesy of Leander. All right, for SBC systems based on ARM3264, you can use the Debian operating system variant, which is what I use, and that is the Raspberry Pi OS. In order to get it running, what I do is I run the wget or curl script for installation. If you have a dedicated drive for OpenMediaVault, it's advised that you use the ISO image. Now, I'm not using a dedicated drive. I've got Debian 11 installed on it. And then for the dedicated drive of the ISO image, this runs OMV from its own drive. That is actually the recommended way of doing it. The Debian operating system is one you can also use. It's what I'm doing, and you can use an existing Debian OS installation for the OpenMediaVault, and that's what I am doing as well. All right, so the script to install OpenMediaVault 6 on the RPi, I've got a 3B Plus and a 4. In retrospect, I probably should have installed it on the 4 because it's got 4 gigs of RAM, whereas the Raspberry Pi 3B Plus only has 1. But that's okay. I mean, it doesn't slow down or anything, but I think it would probably be better on the 4, Model 4. Here's the script for it, and it's a wget script. You run that script when you start the process, and you can walk away and go get a cup of coffee and a sandwich because it takes about 30 minutes to complete, and you have to let it finish, and you can't interrupt it. When it's done, you're ready to go. So you can log in. At that point, you can log into any device on your network and go to the IP address of your Raspberry Pi or whatever you've got it installed on and pull it up. So the first access here is the IP address of the RPi, as I mentioned. And for me, that's HTTP. It's not HTTPS. I don't have it secure yet. 192.168.190 pound login. And once I log into that, I go to the default screen for login, and I use admin and OpenMediaVault as the username and password respectively. You can change the both if you want, and I have. All right, so for ARM images, however, you can set it up with the root password being the same as the admin password. All right, here's what it looks like. Took a snapshot of it. This is a 3 terabyte spinning hard drive, WDC, SATA, and they're in a 2-bay enclosure sitting on top of my computer, which is a full tower. And I've got it set up in RAID 1. I'll talk about that in a moment. So this dual bay enclosure, I've had this thing for like 5 years. It's a workhorse. It's really nice. Connected to USB to my Raspberry Pi Model 3B Plus via USB connection. Because it is set up as a USB connected device, OpenMediaVault doesn't allow that. So what I had to do was I had to work around it and do a RAID 1 Linux. So to do that, I did a Linux software RAID using the following command, and it's the MDA admin command with the following options: create /dev/MD127, and then the -- level equals 1, which is the level 1 RAID, and then -- RAID -devices equals 2, followed by the two drives, which is dev SDA and dev SDB. So both of those drives are designated dev SDA and dev SDB. And when you run that command, you can walk away for a while. Process with Raspberry Pi Model 3B Plus takes about 70 hours to complete for 3 terabyte drives. And the time element's not a typo. It takes about 70 hours. If you've got a Model 4, it takes about 30 hours. So that's why I said in retrospect, I probably should have run it on the Model 4 because it has beefier RAM. But once it's completed, then you've got a RAID 1 system, and I've had it running flawlessly now for well over probably 2 weeks, no problem. When you pull it up in using Thunar is what I use on my system, using the browse network, and it's an SMB CIFS connection, which is a common internet file system connection. And you have to click on the registered user, depending on how you got the permission set up. And I've got it set up with guests allowed. And so I put in my username and I put in my password, and I can click one of the two options that I'm pointing to down there in this image: remember password until you log out, or remember forever. I don't use the forget password immediately, but I use the remember password until I log out. And click connect, and that will connect you to the system. And here it is. Don't have a lot on it right now, but I named it ONAS _3TB on Raspberry Pi.local. I have since made a favorite of it and bookmarked it, so it shows up in the area above under places, so I don't have to go down to the drive itself and then access it that way. All right, so what are the features of OpenMediaVault? So let's go to the app and take a look at that. So let me go ahead and close out the presentation. And is everybody still here? I haven't heard anything. Okay. If you have any questions, feel free to ask me at any time. All right, so here is the OpenMediaVault interface, and it is at 192.168.190, as you see here. And it's a login screen here, so I'll just go down and click on OpenMediaVault 6. I do have admin the same as username, but the password's been changed. Click login. That takes you immediately straight away to the dashboard.
We're seeing the presentation, not your screen share.
Okay. Looks like I have to share every tab. How about now?
Yep.
Okay. Thank you for letting me know that. Anyway, I logged in, and it takes me straight away to the dashboard, and here it is. And so I have told the system that this is what I want to see. So it lets me monitor the CPU. It lets me take a look at the file system, which is the Dev MD127, which is the RAID 1 array, which is 3 terabytes. So I've got 2 3 terabyte spinning drives, but because of RAID 1, it's a mirror, so you get half the capacity. So I'm only looking at 1 3 terabyte array. For some reason, Smart's not monitoring. I don't understand why it's not. Used to. These drives are they're Smart capable, and you can enable them for Smart. You can look at the Smart information, but not here in the dashboard for some reason. So I have to work on that. Here are the services that are currently running: flash memory, rsync server, SMB CIFS, and SSH. Got the load averages for 1 minute, 5 minutes, and 15 minutes. So the system is really running well on the Raspberry Pi, no problem. The CPU utilization is only 5.8%. The system information over here is, it's been up for 25 days and runs like a clock. Don't have to worry about touching it. My Raspberry Pi has been up for as long as a year or longer without being rebooted. I do update it, but I don't reboot it ever, hardly. System time here is displayed here. Currently no updates available. When they are, it'll say yes, and I can go in here and update the system or OpenMediaVault application. The file system is here, and it is ext4 on the Dev MD127. All right, so if I expand system, here's the workbench, and I can configure it for the port and the auto logout time, which I've got set for 30 minutes. I can set up a secure connection if I have a certificate. So I'll need to create one or get one from, probably get one from Let's Encrypt. And see here for notification, I have events here. This is what I told the system I wanted to see on the dashboard. All right. For power management, I've got settings here, which I have monitoring. Tell it to action to be done when generally when pressing the power button. I put my glasses on, can't see, and is nothing. And then that's the power off when you do that. Schedule task here for power management. I don't have any currently set up. For monitoring, I have enabled, which I don't understand why systemctl for monitoring for Smart CTL rather isn't working. So I'll have to work on that. Here are the certificates area, and you can set up certificates for SSH, or you can set up certificates for SSL, one or both. I don't have certificates for SSH because I use password, but I may set that up for certificate access. Update management is here, and the settings for it is here. Community maintained updates only. I don't do pre-release. And then the settings for it here, for updates rather, currently none available. All right, so for plugins, there are some plugins here. I've got a couple installed. One's a backup, so MediaVault backup I have installed. And let's see, I think I have another one set up. It's, flash memory is set up. If I want to use USB stick. And then there was one more I think I had set up. Yeah, OpenMediaVault OMV Extras org. So that's the OMV Extras. And then OMV Reset Perms permissions. So if I want to reset permissions, I can do it easily through that particular plugin. All right, so for backup, I do have backup set up. I do have it set up on a schedule. It's enabled, and it sets up 2 a.m. every Saturday morning. It does a backup of this whole system. For the OMV Extras, I don't have it set up for Docker repo, but at some point I will set that up. I probably will some point in the future move the SD card into the Raspberry Pi 4 instead of the Raspberry Pi 3B Plus if I want to do this. All right, so for network, here are the general information here for Raspberry Pi. I'm going to go into this in great detail, but interfaces here, those are the two interfaces I have. ETH0, IPv4 and 6. I don't have Wi-Fi set up. I don't have proxy or I don't have firewall enabled here, but I can. For storage, if I look at the disks, here are the two disks. Those are the two spinning drives, SDA1 or SDA and SDB, the dev, SDA, SDB. Here are the serial numbers on those devices, and here are the capacities for those two. For file systems, the first thing you do is set up a file system. What I did was I set up the file system for each drive, and then when I ran the RAID command and for Linux RAID, it changed all of that and moved it to the dev MD127. So you don't see the individual drives that I have set up, but it is online. It is referenced. It is mounted, and it's using a certain amount of space, only 2.32 gigs right now, but it's got 2.62 terabytes in capacity available. All right, for smart, you can see here, if I click on devices, it tells me that both devices are good, which means it is monitoring the devices. It's just not displaying it on the dashboard. Temperature of the device, both drives are at 28 degrees centigrade, which is comfortable. And let's see, schedule tasks for these devices. I don't have any currently set up. For software RAID, once I set up the software RAID around OMV application, it then lets me go in here and I can work with it. So dev MD127, it's a clean state. It's mirrored right now. And then here are the two devices that are being mirrored. Dev SDA1 and Dev SDB1. All right, once the file systems are set up, then you need to go in and set up the shared folders. And I have a backup location, which is a shared folder, which is Dev MD127. That is my backup. And then the ONAS_3TB, same device. Relative path to that is ONAS3TB, and there's the absolute path to it, which is different from the one above. All right, both of them were referenced. Services, we've got the flash memory, NFS I've turned off. Reset permissions is I don't use it right now. I believe rsync, I've got it. Let's see if I've got tasks. No tasks set up in there. The server is working, but I don't have it set up. For SMB, CIFS, you set up the shares next, and then here are the two shares. The backup share, which is on the OMV6 backup, and it's enabled, and it's guests allowed. And then ONAS_3TB, which is the shared folder for the actual NAS itself. And that's referenced as a 3TB OMV NAS, guests allowed as well. Both are browsable. All right, and then SSH, got it enabled, permitting root login, password authentication, public key authentication is enabled, but I don't have that set up. For users, I have Data Pioneer, which is myself. Can you guys see this particular tab? Hopefully. Hello? Can you see this tab?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Groups, I've got Data Pioneer. I wasn't sure if I had to click that share tab every time. And then the final thing I want to show you in here is diagnostics, which is pretty good. It's got system information. It tells you all about your system, anything you want to know about it. Load averages, uptime, memory usage, kernel version, processor version, host name, etc., etc. Got the system logs. Doesn't have any data in it, and the reason for it is this is the 32 terabyte SD card, and the logs ran out of space, so I don't have any logs. So I need to get I've got a 256 gig SD card, so I probably will put this system on that at some point. All right, so for remote, I don't have remote access enabled. Here are all the processes, and it looks pretty much like HTOP, or top, not HTOP. It's like top. And so you can go in here and you can work with it. It's live. It's not static. which is nice. And for services, SMBC IFS information shows you that we have the systems up and running, and for the service. And here's the PID for it. Here's the machine, which is my desktop, 192.168.1.112, connected on today, or yesterday, actually. SSH is up and running as well. And yep. And so I can generate a report if I want to. And so here's the report. It lets me copy that report out to the clipboard, to a file if I like. So it's a ton of information. It's not something you'd want to spit out on the screen and peruse. And then performance statistics. This is nice because I can go in here, click on the CPU, and I can look at CPU by hour, by day, by week. Get it to monitor the system here. For disk usage, I can go in and look at disk usage by hour, by day, by week, by month, by year. For load average, look at my load averages, and this is an event that occurred here. And then by week and by month. So there's a spike here on week 6. And then the load average by year, there's that one spike. Forget what the event was that caused that, but it happened. Memory usage is here, and shows you by hour, by week, by month, by year. And then performance statistics, network interfaces, shows you those and the traffic that's going on there. So it's pretty extensive. Uptime here shows you the uptime for the system as well over the period of time. All right. Okay, so that's pretty much OpenMediaVault 6. And like I said, I've been using it. I was using it under OpenMediaVault 5 for, gosh, over a year and a half. Never ran into really any problems with it. It does exactly what I want it to do. Allows me to copy information to the NAS, pretty straightforward, drag and drop. If I go out of here, and if I go, tell me if you can see this. Can you see my Thunar? Brent, can you see the Thunar screen?
I do not see Thunar.
I don't see it.
You don't? Okay. Interesting that it won't show the screen. If I go off of this altogether, bring it up again, let me share this tab. Can you see it now?
I see a Bitcoin.
Okay, you don't see the Thunar screen. All right. For whatever reason here, Brent, this is something you need to know for the future. You can't view any applications that are running like Thunar File Manager in Jitsi, which is really weird. If I click the View tab, I think it takes me back to there. I don't want to do that. Let me see if it'll let me do that there. Can you see the Thunar screen now?
No, so you're saying you can only see things that are browser-based?
Yeah, you can only see browser-based things. You can't see. I'm running Thunar File Manager, and it's not showing it to you. And there's no tab to click to say show it. So, yeah, that's not a good thing. So anyway, I'll go ahead and close it. I was going to show you how easy it is, just drag and drop stuff down to, using File Manager. All you got to do is open up a new window and just drag it in, and it copies, and it's pretty fast on this system. So anyway, that's OpenMediaVault 6. Anybody have any questions about it?
So it seems like obviously you're creating a lot of performance constraints by running this on a Pi, memory, RAM, USB version. I would assume that the performance issues as far as building and so forth, like that 70 hours would probably become a very reasonable period of time on different hardware. But as far as just normal running, what have you benchmarked it all and see like what sort of like how many what kind of throughput you can get in copying files and so forth?
Well, I mean, I can tell you that if you want to copy like a 1 terabyte file, it'll copy over to the NAS and mirror it pretty quickly. I mean, probably less than 20 seconds, 30 seconds to the max. I haven't done any, benchmarks for reporting it, mainly because I don't have the software. I'm looking for open source software that will let me do benchmarking, like for the CPU and for the copying files over and stuff like that. I just haven't found it. But that 70 hours, by the way, is because of the 3B Plus. It has only 1 gig of RAM. I think it would be much faster on the Model 4, which has got 4 gigs or 8.
You don't think the USB connectivity is more of the issue?
No. The general rule of thumb for that is about 30 hours, though, for doing a Linux RAID. All I can tell on the web, I've gone up and looked at several people that have done it on the web, and they're reporting like 30 hours, 40 hours as the median time for.
And these are also on Pis or on more like commodity hardware?
Commodity hardware. Yeah, it still takes about 30 hours for like a 3 terabyte. Now, if you had like a 4 terabyte or 20 terabyte drive, I have no idea how long that would take. That might take days to build a mirror. But once it's built, then it doesn't, you're done. So you don't have to worry about the 70 hours or whatever it is.
I can't remember how long on my Threadripper, but I built a mirrored RAID on it in MD, and it was minutes, maybe. It wasn't very long at all. No.
Oh wow.
Mirrored is usually not that long. It's your parity RAIDs that take a while. Usually your RAID 5s and 6. Usually. But
Right.
yeah, I think you're probably hamstrung by your Pi 3 quite a bit.
That could be. Probably is.
Dan, what is the overall purpose of this? What are you going to use it for, or what are you using?
I'm going to use it for file storage,
File storage.
archiving files and things like that. Pictures and videos. I do a lot of videos and music and things like that. I also have a 4 terabyte RAID 1 from Western Digital that's in its own box. And so I copy files over from the RAID 1, Western Digital RAID 1 in the cloud over to my newly created one as well in OpenMediaVault. OpenMediaVault allows me to set that up pretty easily. So I use that and share files between the two and all that, kind of balance it out.
And the advantage of this over what other options there are, what would make you want to use this?
Because you can access it anywhere on the network or outside the network if you set it up, using port forwarding through your router, and then set it up as a secure site, of course, for admin purposes. But that's what the major advantage is for archiving information and sharing it across the network. Like my wife can share it, can upload files to it as well, and with the access that she has.
Yeah. Okay, I can see that.
Yep.
Dan, do both RAID drives need to be identical?
You mean when you set up the RAID?
Yeah, can they be a different manufacturer or different sizes? Or
for Linux RAID, you want to. It can be different manufacturers, but you want them to be the same capacity. You wouldn't want to use a 500 megabyte or gigabyte drive and a 1 terabyte drive trying to set up.
I assume you'd want the same geometry.
Yeah, you'd want the same geometry.
The more intelligence that's in it, the more they need to be the same, and the more that will affect performance. Not to say it won't work. I think with JBot, it really just doesn't matter at all. You just, capacity is capacity.
Yeah, but if you want to do a mirror, you got to have at least the same size or greater on the second drive. Yeah.
Now, if I wanted to set up a cron job on a remote server to rsync the contents of the remote server to the OpenMediaVault,
Yeah.
Is that a good application for
Yeah.
the?
Yep. In fact, I have my desktop home directory being rsynced to my my own NAS, 3 terabyte NAS that I set up. But I don't do it through OpenMediaVault. I do it through Etsy FSTAB on the desktop and let it copy over to it on a schedule. I think it's 4 o'clock in the morning. I've got it set up to do that, and it's been doing it, so it's working great. So for your application, Alan, with the server, you could set it up with the Etsy FSTAB as well if you wanted to do it that way, and set up cron jobs.
Well, I'm paying for remote cloud storage.
I'm
and
sorry.
it's
Go ahead.
I'm paying for remote cloud storage
Right,
for backups of my server.
right.
And it's not inexpensive. I mean, there's a lot of data, and it's, it adds up. And it'd be interesting if I could install that same utility on a network attached storage drive,
Mm-hmm.
on locally instead of paying a cloud provider.
Well, I used to pay a cloud provider for mine. MediaFire was the cloud provider, and it was expensive. It was like $40 to $45 a year or something like that. And which isn't a lot expensive, but anyway, I got rid of the expense when I set up the 3 terabyte Western Digital NAS. So the stuff that I was copying over to my MediaFire account, now I've just got a personal cloud. So I've got 2 3 terabyte personal clouds, basically 6 terabytes of storage altogether. Is the way I've got it set up. So that's a good application for it.
And approximately how much do the drive device? You have 2 drives.
Mhm.
That what can you buy the device that holds these drives, the drive bays?
Well, I got these 2 from Leander for nothing except postage. But you can probably buy a 3 terabyte Western Digital drive, or you can get a NAS drive for that matter. You can do it that way. I think they're pretty reasonable. Probably a 3 terabyte drive would be around $100, maybe less.
But the device itself, the bay that these drives.
Yeah, right. I think I paid. This one's 5 years old. I think I paid like $55 for it.
Okay, inexpensive then.
Yeah, it's not expensive at all. It's a what is it? Seabrant dual bay drive enclosure. I had thought about buying a 4-bay Seabrant drive enclosure and using 4 3 terabyte drives and setting up RAID 2, and go with a 6 terabyte instead of 3 terabyte NAS, but that's kind of overkill for me. If you want information about it, Alan, I can send you specific information about the model that I have and all that kind of stuff.
Hey, Dan,
Yeah.
how do you spell the name of the enclosure that the drives plug into?
Look at it. It's Sabrent, Sabrent. Dual
Okay,
bay.
got it.
Yeah. You can go up
Okay.
on Amazon. It's probably pretty cheap. Like I said, this one's 5 years old, and they probably have improved models. But this one allows you to do cloning and that kind of stuff. But I don't use it for that. I use it just mainly for 2 spinning drives to set up a RAID 1.
Uh-huh.
That's about it.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Anybody else got a question? Okay. All right, Brett, turn it over to you.
All right. Thanks, Dan. Thanks again for giving us something to think about. That's it's always great to see your content. It's always so well prepared and thought out. But before we stop talking to you, what do you got going on this month?
Well, setting up the presentation, I guess, was the main thing.
24/7, the whole month.
Yeah, To be honest with you, Brent, I haven't done a lot of stuff in Linux. I am taking two German courses, teaching myself German online. Duolingo, and then one called Lingolia. So I'm teaching myself German, starting from the ground up. I took German in undergraduate school, 2 years of German, and was pretty good at it. Was able to write to a pen pal in Berlin and one in Munich. And my issue, though, is conversation and understanding when someone's talking to you. So Duolingo helps with that, and then Lingolia helps you with that as well. So there's a conversation module built into it. So, I want to learn German, so I'm doing that. And the other thing I'm doing is right now I've got a lot of health issues going on, and I've talked to Alan about it. And so I'm working. It's kind of slowed me down, and I'm being tested right now to see if I have potential for dementia or Alzheimer's because I have short-term memory loss, and I don't know what's causing it. Hopefully it's not the jab and the boosters, but short-term memory loss for me was kind of a critical thing. So I'm working with that, and I'm working with a neuropsychologist and some other folks to run some tests to find out. I had a brain scan and that kind of stuff. I don't have the results back from it yet, but hopefully the results will be negative. And I am taking some medication that's usually prescribed to Alzheimer's patients. It's called memantine. 10 milligram. That's supposed to enhance your memory capability, and it seems to be working. So whatever's causing the memory loss, I hope it's temporary. Could be stress related. I have no idea, but that's kind of slowed me down, Brent. So I haven't done a lot in Linux and stuff other than preparing for this. That's about it.
I recall a while back you mentioned taking some sort of supplement for cognitive
Hoopa.
thinking. Do you still do that?
Huperzine A. No, I don't take that anymore. I thought it was working for a while, but then it just stopped. But this thing, what I've got, the condition I have right now, has also manifested itself physically as well, not just mentally. I have problems with walking, and so that's why I think I may have a neurological disorder of some kind. I may have to have a cane here pretty soon because I've got a lot of balance issues, and it's not vertigo, because I have had vertigo and I know what that's like, but it's not vertigo. It's something else. So the doctors are working with me on that as well, trying to figure out what's going on.
Well, I hope it all turns out okay for you.
Yeah, me too. It's not age related. That's the other thing too. People say, "Oh, you're 70 years old, so it's just your age." That happens to everybody. No, it doesn't happen to me. So, I try to stay active, walking, and every day. I walk probably about 2 miles every day or more. And so I stay active. I keep my brain active with what I do on the computer and other things. And so it's not that. So anyway, we'll see what the doctors say. I'll find out. I go see I go see the neuropsychologist here on the 4th, and then I go see my neurologist actually for a final diagnosis on the 5th of June. So I'll find out what the diagnosis is then. I'll let you guys know.
Well, let me know. I'm headed down the same path. I've got some memory loss problems.
Yeah. Do you have physical issues yet? Walking and stuff? Balance?
Balance, yes, but
Yeah.
not walking.
Did you have the vaccines and such, Gene? Can I ask?
Oh yeah, I've had everything.
Yeah. Well, I've read some stuff about it, and I found out that the vaccines and booster, it's not, hype and all that kind of stuff. These are JAMA and other, well-recognized organizations, and they talk about these vaccines causing neurological disorders in people about a year after the fact. And so this is about a year and a half after my first vaccine, and it's troubling because I can't do things that I used to do. I mean, if I walk my dog, I have to be careful when I walk because I don't want to fall. So like I said, I may have to start utilizing the cane if they can't figure out what's going on and correct it.
Well, again, thanks again, and
Yeah.
we're definitely all pulling for you. Hope it's turns out to be a short-term glitch.
Me too. Thank you.
Steve, what you got going on?
Well, I'm dealing with. I did something on a no system D system you shouldn't do. I allowed system D dependent packages, so I go slightly crazy trying to see how I can reverse things. This is an issue because I'm running the unstable version of Debian, and that means I have to go back to an earlier version. They got rid of the backup files. Usually you have a choice and you can revert easily to an earlier version. But this update, for a particular reason, they eliminated the backup versions. So to get the backup versions, I have to go back and enable a different repository which has problems of its own. An early, you know, not the unstable, but the next one is the testing. So I have to enable the testing to pick up a lot of the older versions, which won't have gotten these new versions hopefully yet. And I haven't done that before, and I understand it can be problematic. You want to make sure you deactivate when you do that, so you don't have mixtures from different repositories and screwing around. The other thing related to that is something you may have run into or have a lot of understanding about. Turns out that there used to be, I think it was the year 2000 glitch that people were worried about, and now they've upgraded that to the year 2038 glitch. And so they need to make sure that programs have enough, I think it's bit, they need to be at least 64-bit to go on for maybe several hundred years or several thousand years without having problems, because the time is too late for what the code is. So on Debian, they're renaming a lot of libs. They're adding T64. I'd like feedback on this. They're adding T64, and that means that it's all set. Those particular versions are set to go through beyond 2038. So the problem is that it seems like all of those have a built-in, or many of them have a built-in dependency for lib system D. So I accidentally and stupidly allowed on the 28th and the 29th of February my older files to be removed and replaced by this. And it's an automatic replacement, which I'd never heard of before. But it means that they don't keep the old version. So that's why I have to go to the next down the line repository. Anyway, that's all I plan to speak about. Dan, I just want to say one thing, that I am a physician. I'm not a neurologist. I'm not an expert on any of the issues you're dealing with, and that's why I keep my mouth shut. When it comes to vaccines, no vaccine is going to be perfect. The issue with a vaccine that's recommended to the general population for universal vaccination is very simple. It's that it has significant benefits and produces less problems than the actual disease you're vaccinating against. And that is the case. I am very comfortable with the COVID vaccines. Anybody who says this is a perfect vaccine, they're wrong. And one problem is that each person is unique, and there's going to be always going to be a segment of people who are going to have adverse reactions, sometimes even fatal ones, to the most innocuous, to something that is innocuous and beneficial to most people. But the bottom line calculation is that the vaccine should be better than the natural disease. and that there's a significant risk for the natural disease. And so comments on anything I've said appreciated, but especially about T64.
Well, Steve, real quick, I just want to say that I had the 3 vaccines and I think it's 3 boosters, and they're all Pfizer. And, and I was told that's what you need to have because to protect yourself. I spoke with my brother in Arizona. He didn't take any vaccines, so he's not experiencing these problems. But he said he had a next door neighbor who's had all the vaccines and all the boosters, and he's like in his 65 plus, and he's having the same problems, balancing issues, short-term memory loss, that same kind of thing. So it makes me wonder. That's all I got to say.
Sure. Understandable.
Okay.
What about the Shingrix vaccine?
Oh, wait a minute. Which vaccine?
Shingrix for shingles?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Well, what about it, Alan?
I was just wondering if there's been any, adverse side effects that, related to that vaccine.
I'm sure there have been. The problem in safety, I was in pharmaceuticals in the industry and drug development, and I got a little different perspective, and at the FDA for a while. And the point is, when you develop anything, your primary focus, especially with drugs, is efficacy. And the reason for that is twofold. One, the company is going to make a claim primarily about efficacy, ultimately, if it gets approved. So they're going to focus on developing something that they have the ability to market to a lot of people on the basis of efficacy. And the safety in a relatively small population, which is for drugs, I'm not talking about biologics or vaccines, but for drug development in general, is relatively small. And you only find out the safety issues, the potential safety issues that might be serious and rare when you've exposed a whole bunch of people. So if you do have a drug and a company wants to get it approved to use in hundreds of millions of people because they'll make enough money to justify the investment, then only when it's out there maybe a couple of years do you start getting safety signals. The other thing about safety is that it could be anything. You collect safety data in a clinical trial. You ask for spontaneous responses. Okay, anything bad? And then you'll go in and have a list that you think might be related. And when all is said and done, in a typical placebo-controlled trial, you're going to compare the incidence of those reports with the incidence in the placebo, and you hope that diarrhea, constipation, vomiting, nausea, a headache, which are very common even for people who are not taking any treatments, are going to be more common in the placebo, in the placebo group than in the treatment group. And you have two things. One is the doctor, the clinical investigator, makes a judgment call about whether an adverse reaction is caused by, is related to that drug or not. And they don't know because it's traditionally double blind, so maybe they'll say it's causally related to the placebo if the patient is taking the placebo. So bottom line is you get this vast array of different complaints, a lot of them kind of weird. And you have to figure out for labeling purposes, which is part of the approval process, what you will say is due to the drug, what is a significant, serious event by regulatory criteria, what is, and what results in a contraindication, where you say people of this sort shouldn't take this drug. Now, when it comes to vaccines like Shingrix, the issue is a little different because now you're saying it's not going to go into just 100 million people. We want everybody to take this. And you if it's everybody over 65, everybody, you know, over 50, everybody over whatever magic age, and it's the population you've studied it in that you get approval for, and you're saying in this population that it's approved for, the benefits are much, you know, are clearly better than the risks. So yeah, I mean, we took the earlier zoster vaccine, and then we took Shingrix, and I have not ever had, to my knowledge, I have not ever had a problem with zoster, either before or since. It could be a question of my memory, but I'm 81, and I'm experiencing what I hope is just normal failures of this, that, and the other. Like finding the right word. So when you said Shingrix, it has to take 15 seconds for me to say Shingrix. Oh, I know that kind of thing. But I'm still vertical. This is my answer when people ask, how are you? I'm vertical. My wife just bought me a walking stick. She's because she knows, you know, I have a particular medical problem where I've got both problems with weakness and imbalance. And so, and I'm going to be dealing at least with we'll try an injection. I do not want back surgery. Spine surgery, I've been dealing with this for 30, 40 years. And now it's reached a point where if they could do something very selective, I might even consider it. But I keep hoping that I'll just die before I need it, you know, before it becomes like that. So anyway, that was a wandering off. I hope that answered the Shingrix question.
Steve, I tell you what, the finding the right words, and also forgetting what you were talking about. I mean, if something interrupts you, you can't remember what you were talking about. Those are the two things I'm experiencing right now too, and that's why the doctor has been running several, you know, extensive tests. When I went to the neuropsychologist, you know how long I was with him? I was with him for 2 hours in his office from 10 to 12, broke for lunch, came back, started testing at 1 and went to 6:30, nonstop.
Well, if you can do that, you're passing some test.
Yeah. Exactly. So,
you know, I have to say that I think the fellas in the group, the people in the group, in case that girl ever shows up, or non-binary or whatever, I don't want to be using the wrong terminology.
oh God.
Anybody who comes to this group, I have to think is rather swifter than the average, you know, from a point of view of basic smarts plus general educational, you know, background. And that means that you're going to be, to me, non-scientifically, means you're going to be more concerned about any change, so that you drop from having, you know, an ability to think and remember and recall and deal with things at the 90th percentile. And then when you hit, you know, beyond 60, you start realizing you're now down to the 80th percentile. And you said, oh my God, I'm failing. Whereas a lot of people out there, you really have to, if you want to get something across, you have to appreciate how they think, what they don't know, and you have to talk slow and simple. So,
well, the problem is
a very non-scientific.
Yeah, you know, the problem is, Steve, as you know, for somebody who's, you know, had prided himself that the fact that he's got a sharp mind, always quick, was able to find the right words, you know, on the fly, and hold a conversation with somebody in technology and that kind of stuff, and then reach a point where that doesn't happen anymore. That you know, it's a sad thing. I have to tell anybody that's facing old age that happens. But I don't know that all of mine is old age related. I'm only 70. I'm not 80.
It's true.
Like you are. I mean, you're
That's
pretty
right.
sharp.
You're
You're pretty
young
sharp today for 80 years old. So you're in good shape. But I want to stay in good shape mentally as well. And so I got to do something about it. So if I have a problem, I'm going to hit it head on and find out what it is and get it fixed if I can.
Well, again, I think I said it. If there's anything you feel can be worthwhile asking me about, I'm happy to talk to you about it. Just the caveat is that the people you're already speaking to should be a lot more knowledgeable, sensible, and useful to you.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
All right.
Back to
Thank-
T64, which is bugging the hell out of me. Anybody have a comment? Please. And I'm finished.
You're the only man I know that refuses to use System D, Steve. So that's my only comment.
Join us.
System D, Ray.
I think it takes intelligence to fight the battle against System D that you're fighting. Maybe it takes wisdom to realize you don't have to fight it anymore.
I don't know if I could live without System D.
It does weird me out how encroaching it is, and with Debian 12, it's like where's my system logging daemon? Like where's system syslog ng or r syslog? It's like, oh, it's not there now. It's just System D doing it. It's like,
Right.
Like pretty soon we won't even have a kernel. We're just gonna have System DOS. All right.
Well,
I
don't
missed.
say DOS to a bunch of Linux users, okay?
Well, Gene, what do you got going on?
Just turn my mic off. Well, just life issues more than anything else. I'm still running what I've run for several years now, Ubuntu. And I'm looking forward, I guess, I don't know, has anybody heard about the new, there should be a long-term release coming out, I guess April maybe, but I haven't really looked into it. So I'm looking forward to that and seeing what is new and great, and hopefully at least some System D, Steve, not all, but maybe some. But other than that, I'm working on getting together a setup where I can move out of this house. So that's a big job, and for another forum than this. So I'll let you pass on by me, Brent.
All right. Thanks, Gene. Kevin, I know we heard from you briefly before, but what you got going on in the Linux world?
Not a whole lot. So mostly around work for the last, I don't know, 5 or 6 years. I've had maybe 25 or so, 28 hosts dedicated to a fairly large, for a small, a fairly large sized small elastic deployment. Right. So anything under 50 nodes is small, but once you're approaching 30, that's the large side of small. So it looks like that is now coming to an end. We're migrating off in another direction, which means I will really only have I'll have 2 Intel NUCs running, one running Debian, one running Gen 2, and that's about all that I will have left. So
I have to ask what direction you're going. I may not be of broader interest, but it's certainly of interest to me.
So we are going Splunk Cloud. I am happy to chat with you about like why and what size and what that's going to look like. Funding was, I think, a very large part of it. So it's being paid for by someone else.
Oh, that always helps.
So we can go from free self-hosted Elastic, free in quotes, to free in quotes Splunk Cloud with like enterprise support and things like that, and someone else is footing the bill.
Yeah, in a lot of ways, that sort of free is a truer free than DIY.
It's true. I mean, I don't have to spend a lot of time on administration. I mean, I spend in the days out of the year, right? Maintaining those hosts. Just single digits of days out of the year, of my work year. But yeah, there's still a lot of, there are good financial reasons to go ahead and make that move.
I'm sure I've mentioned this before, but I've not mentioned it recently. Kevin assisted me in the initial build of our first Elasticsearch instance, which is a database of sorts. It's somewhere between a database and just sort of like a log sync. For what it does, it has more advantages of either, and it has become one of the most important security tools we have in my organization. Once upon a time, it was just me using this thing. Now our entire security team is trained in querying it and responding to certain reports and alerts from it. And again, it's just become one of our, and it's certainly one of my most important tools. It's been since rebuilt with some improvements and some growth, but it now has billions of log entries contained within, with an ingest along the lines of which these are kitty numbers for Kevin, but 70 gigs a day or something like that. But for us, that's a lot of data to manage. So again, I have to thank Kevin yet again for that. And the reason I ask is there's some things going on in my life where we may change the way we're doing that. Again, I don't want to make too much about this because it's probably of limited interest, but we're looking at Microsoft Sentinel as an option there. Because it seems a little more affordable than Splunk. And we're trying to embrace the Microsoft Online ecosystem as much as possible to keep things simple.
That's understandable. Sentinel was on my list of things to look at down the line, but
yeah, I was really tickled when the solution to get logs from network devices and just anything generic syslog or CEF was to install a Linux box on our network. That's the official Microsoft way, is use syslog ng or rsyslog to forward the logs to their cloud thing with a special. Basically, you just download a piece of code off of GitHub that shoves it up into the cloud.
That's it. So moving away from that, just to touch on personal. Dan, good luck with German, especially with it being a language that you're going back to. I'm about 3.5 years into Gallic. I still don't feel like I can have a meaningful conversation. But it is what it is. So yeah, good luck with German. I hope that works out well.
Is that it for you, Kevin?
Yes, sir. That is me.
All right. Thanks so much. Alan? You are muted.
Okay. I've been spending some time researching and trying to figure out Internet of Things sensor networks using LoRaWAN and an application called Meshtastic, which is pretty interesting technology for large scale sensors like temperature or any kind of online data. And the problem I'm having is that a lot of the hardware is out of stock right now because these technologies are becoming discovered. And so I can either build my own or try to buy some more integrated hardware. But anyway, that's one thing I've been working on. And I've also been working on my websites, and that's about it in terms of Linux.
So, Alan, it's funny that you mentioned Meshtastic because I've started studying for the technician in general class, amateur radio licenses, and it seems like everywhere I look, everybody's talking about Meshtastic in some way. So that's a really timely comment. I may have questions for you about that later.
Sure. The interesting, the Meshtastic, these are basically radio technologies and also network technologies. People are using Meshtastic as kind of like walkie-talkie applications where you can actually communicate with other nodes across this network. It does not involve, it doesn't necessarily have to involve cell phone signals. It's just, and the LoRa and LoRaWAN technologies, they are in unlicensed radio spectrum. But they also can operate in the amateur radio bands if you choose to, which require some additional. You need to have a header with your call sign, and they cannot be encrypted. Whereas the regular LoRaWAN, and Meshtastic are encrypted and don't require. They're all in public spectrum.
Alan,
Yeah.
I just heard, I guess it was a week or so ago, that some people had hacked some kind of site, and I don't recall the details of it, and I don't even know if I ever knew the real details. But they had used the Internet of Things electric toothbrushes or battery-powered toothbrushes that somehow had a Internet of Things connection, and they had used that in the denial of service attack. Did anybody else hear about this? Steve? Oh, okay, good. I'm not the only one. I'm not hallucinating. Thanks, Steve.
No, but it wasn't true. Well,
Oh,
I
it
heard
wasn't?
about this on Security Now.
Oh,
They had
okay.
a long discussion. They said it came out, there was a Swiss security firm that a guy worked for who was one of the security people. He gave an interview, and he used as an example of the potential risks.
Oh, okay.
He said, imagine if you have, there's 3 million smart toothbrushes, and they could be put into a botnet and attack. And so the paper that he was giving the interview to had an article saying a Swiss company
They ran
was
with it. Huh?
attacked by a botnet and cost them millions of dollars. And it's only in the next few days that people, and it got widely disseminated. And then Then it came out. No, it was a hypothetical.
Okay.
Nobody.
We got too many security issues for people to start making them up, you know?
Right.
Yeah, it could happen.
All right. Thanks for that. Larry.
Can you hear me okay?
We can, and I always try to pick on the person who seems the least prepared at any given time. So,
Or I'm guess I'm unprepared with anything to say about Linux. I wanted to thank Dan for his nice presentation. He I couldn't tell that he had any mental problems whatsoever. Doing a good job, no matter whether you think you have problems or not, I guess. As far as age goes, we got two guys running for president who are like 80 years old. Now those guys, they don't seem to realize that they have any problems with their mental capacity.
Yeah, Larry, the current president, you ask him to count to 3, he misses 2 of the numbers.
I know. It's at some point, I mean, for everybody, you got to decide, well, younger people are better than I am, and it's time to pass the torch, so to speak, and let somebody else take over. And, I'm not very close. I'm very close to your age, too. And as far as I can tell, I can still outperform my family members who always thought I was the smartest guy. That's right. For some people, I'm kind of crude. I think, well, as far as dementia goes, some people never had anything upstairs to start with. So what difference does dementia make? So, but the only thing I just don't seem to have the stamina that I used to. It seems like to me I need a lot more rest. And I seem to have a lot better functioning earlier in the day these days than later in the day. I'm kind of losing it, So that's what I mean by getting rest or taking a nap or something. I used to be able to burn the candle on both ends, but not anymore. So anyway, thanks for the presentation. And I'll leave it at that for right now.
You're welcome.
So I did hear something as far as the Internet of Things or security with doorbells, I think, are one of the latest things they're talking about is being very insecure. People, bad actors getting in and taking over people's cameras and their doorbells. But I mean, I personally think all this having, electronic and everything and every toy and every device these days is pretty cool, but I don't really think people understand what it means or have any idea what's going on with it. And so I don't go for the latest and the greatest. I just wait till it breaks and people hand it to me. Here, have this. Then I start playing with it. So, but anyway, I'll stop right now and maybe chime in some more later on. But thanks for the presentation.
all right. Thanks, Larry. Pete, what do you have going on?
Okay, and everybody hear me?
Yep.
I've got a poor connection because I'm way down here in Florida. I have not been doing anything with Linux. I have been having a lot of visitors coming down from Fairview and Asheville to spend some time down here. It's interesting. And I think somebody said that you guys have had a really mild winter up there. So I guess they like going to the beach. Is my best guess. I want to thank Dan a lot for his presentation. And I have a question, Dan. I used to run a NAS, and I used free NAS on a Raspberry Pi. And then they upgraded the security protocols Let me turn on my camera. I don't know if that's going to mess this up even more. They updated the security protocols in my old, I think it was running on a Pi 1 or 2. Anyway, it wouldn't support the newer protocol. And I've been thinking about, getting something going again. But this OpenMediaVault seems exceptionally complicated compared to the FreeNAS. Do you have any comments on that?
Well, I've not used FreeNAS, and so I really can't tell you. As far as to be really complicated, I can tell you it's not. It's
Really?
very easy to set up. Yeah.
Okay.
It's almost hands off to get it started, and then you go in and configure it. And there is a process that you have to use to do that, which I kind of walked you through when I was doing the presentation on the features.
Right.
Setting up the disk first, and then setting up the file system, and then setting up the SMB CIFS shares, and then the share folders rather, and then the CIFS shares last. And if a disk fails or you need to remove the disk, you have to walk the process backward, and it won't let you execute a step that's going to crash the system. It'll tell you that it'll tell you that you need to do this first before you do that. So I don't think it's very complicated at all, to be honest.
All right. Well, I'll have to look into it. Now, with that excellent presentation you gave, I've got a good starting point.
Appreciate it.
The last thing I have is I read a really, really good book recently. It's called Project Hail Mary, and it was written by the guy that wrote the book The Martian. And one of the things I liked about it a lot is it's loaded with science facts that have been vetted. Things I never even thought about, let alone, was aware of. About a amoeba of some type, Steve, that attacks our sun and starts cutting down on the amount of light reaching the Earth. And they figure we have about 28 years left before everything goes. And they build a spaceship and they send it to another sun 4 light years away that is experiencing the same thing. And they want to see if they can. Oh, and then there's a third sun that is being attacked by this amoeba, but it's not. The light output is not going down, so they want to find out why. And it's really, it's a 13-year trip. They build this special spaceship, and it's a one-way trip. They don't have enough fuel on it to get back. They only got enough to get there, so they have 3 volunteers that volunteer to go. And I really enjoyed that book. I liked all the science fact, and it was very well written. If anybody saw the movie The Martian or read the book, I can't remember the guy that wrote it, but he does a really super job. So that's it for me.
Thanks, Pete.
Okay.
Arnold mentioned he's still running Mint 21.3 without issues. Doesn't have anything else specific to say other than he may have commented on otherwise. Leander, I think we spoke with you briefly, but what do you got going on?
I guess probably not as much or more. The reason why I'm off to an angle here is yesterday we ran across a whole pallet of ThinkPad T500s that local community college was throwing out, and they had barely been used. Like, there's not even wear marks on the keyboard. These are 15-year-old Core 2 Duo machines that pretty much useless to the rest of the world, but you put ThinkPad hardware in front of a Linux user is like a cake in front of a fat kid. So I picked up one and stuck an SSD in it from my junk pile and put bring enough to share. No, I did not. But they put Debian 1264 on it with XFCE. Your Red Hat derivatives these days only can run on 64-bit V2 systems, which is Sandy Bridge and newer. There's been 4 revisions of x86 64, and this is the Core 2 Duo was like the first one. So that can't run on it, but it's doing quite all right. It's got a built-in webcam, Bluetooth. I think I've got an 8 gig of RAM kit that'll fit in this, but that'll take more digging in my junk pile. And hey, you know what? It works. So I don't know what to do with it. I mean, it's like in perfect shape. They never use these things. I guess the community college got them on a grant. The batteries are toast because they're 14 years old. But yeah, it's what did that set you back? Nothing. It was going into the garbage. So yeah, um, that works for me. I guess it'll be a radio computer for like SDR and stuff like that. But yeah, it's amazing what you can get away with. I figure this would be a good stress test for it. It is struggling a little bit doing Jitsi, but again, could you imagine this computer came out in 2009, 2010? Could you imagine trying to use a computer from 1995 in 2010? I mean, you wouldn't be able to. So anyway, I just thought that was interesting. Let's see what's SDR. Oh, Kevin, I mostly just use the little new elect RTL SDRs. I've been looking at a hack RF, and my ICOM 7100 is some kind of SDR, but I don't think it works in Linux. I've not gotten that far to mess with that yet. But yeah, I have a couple of RTL SDRs, and you can get the up converters, the hack RF up converters, I think, and listen to HF on them. But I might do that. I mostly just listen to 2-meter and local stuff with mostly just listen to 2-meter and local stuff with that. So that's been my Linux project the last 24 hours is hey, free laptop. Anyway, but let's see on the time T thing, that is most of your that is because your 32-bit counting time. So Unix and Unix-like OSs count time from January 1st, 1970, and then 2038 is when you run out of bits to count with. And so if you don't use a 64-bit time value, you roll over again to 1970, and that would cause a lot of things to break. And so time T, I think they use like a long or a long or a double or something to give it a little bit more space so that 32-bit programs and libraries can keep working past 2038. That's what that's about. Because of the uh, time cost or whatever associated with migrating this stuff, I imagine some things will get left behind, and they're probably focusing on stuff that goes against System D and all this before they get to the 1.5% of people who don't use System D out there. So I kind of gave up, and I just realized everything sucks. So I'm at least picking the thing that sucks that's being worked on. So that's why I went with that. But yeah, that's what that's all about. Health on me has been pretty good. I would say do not underestimate the effects of stress. The last couple of years since our reorganization, I have been doing, routinely 55-hour weeks, and it's catching up to me to the point. Like, I mean, I'm not 40 yet, and I could probably fail an Alzheimer's screening at this point. So don't underestimate that effect on you to any degree. I'm probably a bad one to ask about medical side effects because, like my joke earlier, I kind of have some IBS and from various things, and so doctors are like, "Is it messing with your stomach any?" I'm like, maybe. I don't know. It's not any worse than it usually is. So, and all these things affect people differently. So, strangely, this time my wife just got over COVID a couple of weeks ago, and I didn't catch it this time. We both got our last booster on the same day, so I guess my maybe my immune system finally woke up and decided to be useful. So that was handy. I never tested positive, never had any symptoms. The last time I got it in 2022, that was the only time I've gotten it. It kicked my butt for about a week. For about 3 weeks after that, I could hardly walk down to the mailbox and back. And I had been vaccinated by that point too, to the extent that they recommended. So yeah, that could just be I'm really fat and out of shape too. So anyway, that could be anything. But but yeah, so yeah, don't underestimate stress. That's part of why I. The only other news I've got is I'm waiting to hear back. I finished 2 rounds of interviews for a job at UNC. Just because I'm getting tired of the hectic, constantly on fire work environment, and among other things, pay increase and more specialized. It's for a research computing position, so I think I did pretty well in the interview. It's remote, so I won't have to move. But fingers crossed, I at least get an offer out of it. That would be nice. So
Good luck.
yeah, thank you. Nice thing about staying in the UNC system is I get to keep my benefits. Hopefully, they just changed the rules on that. Kevin probably knows about that too, where they just changed the rules and you have like, if you're an EHRA or something like that, they're changing the leave policies where it doesn't accumulate, and they don't pay you out if you leave and all this stuff. So that's a little unnerving. But if I do get offered it, I think I would squeak in under the old rules. But yeah, it would just be nice. It's a subset. If what I do would be about half of my responsibilities that I have an app for 30% more pay. So it was like a duh. Let's try it. Let's see. Yeah. Maybe then I'll start remembering stuff again. But that's kind of all I got.
All right, thanks, Leander. Rusty? Rusty, if you're talking, you are on mute.
On the far side of the moon.
All right, going once. Rusty? That's probably with not having cameras. You don't know if people are there or not there. All right, well, I'll go. I wanted to ask some folks.
Can you hear me?
Yes, now we can.
Okay, I don't know what I did. I have a dangling microphone on too much electronics. So I really appreciate all the comments. A great presentation. I appreciate, Dan, I think that brother in Arizona is a twin. Is that not so?
Identical, yeah.
Yeah. So that's a compelling worry, but still you have to allow that you are still not the same persons by a wide range of experience in just living. And so you can't narrow it down to just whether or not you differ in having vaccination as opposed to him not, because there's so many other anecdotal differences. But I wanted to just weigh in. I really think we have to give ourselves credit for all of us. I think on this here, I can tell from past revelations of ourselves that we are multitaskers, and there are discussions that humans really weren't meant to be multitasking, even though we do. And when and Leander's stating, stress is a feature of multitasking. So I think we have to give ourselves credit there. And then there's the general demise of time, not enough physical exercise, rest, etc. But in my own case, I'm having to back off on my back. I appreciate what Steve said how do you get more mileage out of your body? Well, careful exercise, more careful all the time. I think the jury is still out on what some of the side effects might be on vaccines, but I think we have to allow that we don't understand all of the chemistry of our changing brains. And I certainly think that there will be discovered systems to generally modify or alter, but a lot of the modification, I think, is just going to be through physical fitness, through a diverse and really natural diet, and not a artificial diet. And there is an article, I really don't have a camera to post this, but some might be interested in reading on my favorite topic are cytokines and inflammation that certainly exists in our organs and in our brains. And there's a paper by it's actually a pharmacology paper. It's doesn't even have it's not written by a clinician, but it gets into the chemistry of soluble beta amyloid oligomers. That's simply to say that the peptides discussed have not joined in to become fibrils or protein deposits. They have direct inflammatory ability in relation to the support cells in the brain called microglia. But you can Google that, fighting beta amyloid oligomers and neuroinflammation. One of the things I love about some of this reading and the availability of a gigantic medical library, if you want to dig into it, it shows the change of our understanding of everything over time. And in the same article, there is mention, doxycycline is in the title. It's one of the more popular go-to molecules to look at dampening the metalloprotease enzymes that act on all of our tissues to constantly remodel, tear down, and build up those tissues. And doxycycline is not just an antibiotic. That's what I love to repeat to anyone that I know medically as a peer professional, or just to point out that, yes, when it was discovered, it was an antibiotic, but it turns out it's pleiotropic, which means that it is just like the food we take in our diets. It's the array of molecules that are streaming through our systems have multiple duties, and doxycycline as a derivative of fungus and essentially represented in our diets before it was ever discovered, as a pill. It has this diverse set of effects. And anyway, in that article, you'll find that doxycycline is an ongoing topic of study as a modulator of some of the bad things that happen in the chemistry of our brains. By the way, that's such low dose that it doesn't even affect the microflora of the bowel. And there is another whole thing. The bowel and the immune system that is operating in our bowels through the Peyer's patches, which are sort of like a bunch of tonsils situated down in the lining of the intestine. It goes on and on. It's just so phenomenal to read about it. The human body is essentially it has all the diversity of a coral reef, and then multiply that over and over. But anyway, so I just saw two people wanting to break in and speak, and I went off on a tangent too much.
Rusty, it's Gene. These oligomers, where do they come from?
Where did well, oligomers are responsive. All proteins are a milieu of molecules dictated by the transcription of DNA, facilitated by messenger RNA and transfer RNA, and we're just a constantly changing milieu of chemistry interacting across our organs and tissues, and each one of us is a coral reef constantly being remodeled, if you want to look at it that way.
These are natural processes. This is not something that
right
would be introduced from the outside.
Yeah, I mean, you're not going to make beta amyloid peptides go away. They're running around as soluble molecules. Whether or not, nobody even knows whether the deposits that are claimed to be associated with Alzheimer's, whether they are the cause or whether the deposits are just sort of an evidence of something else that's more direct. So you could just go on and on. I love reading about it. You just have to take it all with a grain of salt, to use a metaphor. As a matter of fact, when you read in science, you have to realize that the only way to communicate is to communicate with metaphors. We have these high level, even in the naming and the nomenclature of molecules, we name them sometimes by metaphorical terms. So I find the whole area to be fascinating. But anyway, Dan.
Yeah, it's interesting that you talked about the beta amyloid, because that was one of the things that the neurologist said she wanted to do, is do an MRI of my brain to look to see if I had any beta amyloid plaque in the hippocampus area of the brain. And they couldn't do an MRI on my brain because I have metal in my eyes. And so they had to resort to the CT scan, and that's not going to show beta amyloid plaque. But the medication that she has me on has the doxycycline that you mentioned in it. It's called a memantine. And it does have a side effect at full strength, because I can go to bed at night, take one of these at night, and I sleep like a baby. It puts me to sleep. I have more dreams now than I've ever had in my life. So it's having some kind of an effect on me. Whether it's beneficial or not, I don't know. But
well, I'm not aware of memantine having anything to do with doxycycline, but there may be someone may have combined it as a, as a not necessarily innovative, but just simply convenient combination, which is common, and it's common in marketing and pharmacy to try to gain a certain number of sales by combining more than one agent.
Right.
And there's lots of description of a potential role for doxycycline in everything from rheumatology and autoimmune disorders and et cetera, even without getting into the brain as an organ. There's lots of, it goes around and still is going around the role of doxycycline in the endothelium and the breakdown of that might lead to arteriosclerosis, and for some other conditions such as dissecting aortic aneurysm, there's a whole zone of the large vessels that can become weakened either both by genetics and environmental change, where that has been put to clinical trial and is still being debated about whether or not it has a role in modifying the rate of change in a breakdown of a major vessel like the aorta. So it goes on and on.
Sounds like you were an MD at some point.
Yeah, I'm one. Steve and I are the two retirees, trying to keep our brains active even after we bowed out of the business and activity of practicing.
Right.
I did want to segue to going back to software and Linux. I don't have anything to report there. I'm reading up on Obsidian. Others should know Dan sent me a nice note with links on Obsidian. I'm still reading about it, and I'm not yet committed to be generating notes by spawning whole new files and where basically the file folder system is a certain amount of the index organization. I still I'm watching some presentations and reading on Obsidian, and my main ergonomics to me is one of the aids, along with organization of documents, that can help in this later life use of our brains. And so I'm really big on ergonomics and aids. And the two things that I'm most concerned about is to be able to have metadata extracted from my browser experience, which is a document that has a URL, that has a date, etc. And so I'm reading up to see what plugin with Obsidian really extracts the metadata that can be an aid in having a generic bookmark manager. I see bookmarks mentioned for Obsidian, but they are bookmarks within the multiplicity of files and folders that are being spawned by the note-taking creation. I haven't yet found the plugin that describes how it grabs something from the browser and incorporates it into a created note. So the other interest area that I have is the ergonomics of selecting text in Windows, and also using a clipboard to sort of shoot that current selected text into at least one destination application. And so far the number of keystrokes still seems to be, you have to select the text, you have to then go over to your other application away from your browser, you have to click into the window of that other application, and then you have to hope that you've clicked again into the field or the location in the window. And then you have to do a keystroke, which is, Control V to paste. And I'd love to have a way around that ergonomics. If anyone has anything to share. And here is another age-related ergonomics issue. I wish that there was a form of highlighting on the laptop or workstation that was the equivalent of the Android phone selection that gives you two handlebars, that you can spread the handlebars after you have demarcated two handlebars, you can expand the selected text, because I'm finding a so-called click and drag ergonomics to be not very pleasant at my age. I don't know what it is about my right hand, but it ain't. So if people get my drift here, does anyone know of add-ons to get the handlebar, an expandable multi-word text selection? And with click and drag, if you get it wrong, you kind of have to go back to the beginning and click again at the beginning and drag again through the whole darn selection. And I don't like working with the phone, but I have not found the, in a Windows Manager system or in a given distribution of Linux, I have not found a modification of the text selection that creates those two little grip handlebars that can be spread. Either the left side can be expanded leftward and the right side can be expanded rightward.
Rusty, as far as Obsidian goes, check out the Data View plugin. And there's a Wikipedia plugin as well for extracting data from the web. And there's more than that. If you want me to research the handlebar thing with Obsidian, I can do that for you too.
Yeah, I thought if there is a behavior for the mouse that's generic, I'm assuming it would not be from Obsidian, but it would be an operating system tool that is built into the distribution, and it would affect the mouse in, for any text that's showing anywhere in a window, whether it's Obsidian or the browser or LibreOffice or whatever application.
I have not seen that in a non-mobile environment. For desktop, I haven't seen that.
To me, ergonomics is just a big deal as we grow older, but then the other thing is, let's see, I mentioned it for someone helped me with the name of the browser plugin for documentation of bibliographies. I'm having a
Zotero.
Zotero. I mentioned this last month that Zotero has a plugin for each browser. And so once you load a URL that contains a web document, it extracts the metadata, it parses the HTML, and it carries over what is needed according to library standards. It grabs from there's a plugin for every browser, and Zotero gets what it needs automatically without having to use a clipboard or cut and paste.
Citation information.
Yeah, so that's what that will tip the scales. If I see that feature in Obsidian, that will kind of like, I won't quibble over the issue of whether or not the bookmarks are XML within a single file document or whether they are multiple files spawned across folders. That's just too good an ergonomics.
Well, Rusty, I can tell you that particular plugin or multiple plugins exists in Obsidian. I just can't remember the names.
Yeah.
I'd have to research it and send it to you.
Well, it's all in the name of we all would like our empire of control over over past, our history of exposure to ideas which are very much tied up in our web browsing. I'm trying to gain control of that, just like everyone else.
Yeah.
Well, I've really enjoyed today's discussions.
Hey, thanks, Rusty. I think I got everyone else. I'll say a couple things. Wanted to ask some folks about if they've had any experience with the Flipper Zero, the hacking tool for certain wireless technologies, Bluetooth and so forth. Steve, you had something to mention?
Let me unmute. Again, on Security Now, they had 2 days worth of discussion, not 2 days, but 2 weeks worth because it's a weekly program. So the first week, they centered this on Flipper Zero in relation to Canada banning it because of its relationship, putative relationship to car thefts. And they said that what it does, so in the first week, they said, gee, what it does is enable you to pick up and trap the fob signals. So you trap 2 fob signals in a row when someone tries to open their car, tries to unlock their car. And then you transmit the first signal. And the second signal is then set up to be the one that car is going to be looking for. And the person who's used the fob and had to do it twice doesn't necessarily realize that the car unlocked not because he fobbed it, but because someone with this device was able to trap the signals, use the first one, and hold on to the second one so that when the car is unguarded, they can use that second signal to unlock it again. So that was the gist of the first session. The next week, people said, yes, but just unlocking the car doesn't mean you can get in and drive off with it, because that's a different kind of signaling arrangement when you have a fob, when you depend upon a fob and the signals. So, and the host basically apologized and said, yeah, you're right, making much. And the bottom line there was that even though it's been implicated, there are lots of ways of getting into a car, like smashing a window. So just using this device should not necessarily make for an explosion of car thefts that would not, that were not otherwise possible. And beyond that, I have no great knowledge of whether there's an additional twist. Apparently, this thing was promoted on TikTok or other social media. And that led to a whole bunch of people apparently buying it, buying the device or setting up the device, however they did it. But the question of whether it really is meaningful as a major cause and whether you would reduce the incidence of car thefts in Canada or elsewhere by banning it, which is what the Canadian government did, is above my pay grade.
Well, I just want to piggyback on Steve and say that Security Now with Leo Laporte and Steve Gibson is an excellent program. I mean, absolutely. You'll learn a treasure trove of information from those guys.
I have a coworker that is interested in acquiring one and doing some security research within our organization to see what havoc might be wrought by such a device. After doing some reading about it, it does seem like a lot of the attacks it can accomplish are against things that are like already known about, like at least were theoretically identified, like the car thing. Like some cars, older cars are susceptible to attacks, but newer cars have employed technology well before the Flipper Zero was ever manufactured, because the theoretical problem was identified, or it was perhaps being exploited by homemade devices or what have you. So it sounds like it's not like a novel thing. Most of what it does is just, it's a collection of older exploits. But that being said, I still wonder if it's worth my organization giving this guy one of them to play around with and see, because being in a healthcare organization, we do have a lot of older stuff. And it'd be curious to see, like, if if someone could use it to their advantage or just to our disadvantage, for creating denial of service or what have you in certain areas in certain ways, or if there's anything particularly special about this device. Does it do anything new, or is it really just good marketing and a fun hobbyist tool? Alan, if you're talking, I can't hear you. Still can't hear you.
Alan.
I'm sorry, I was just typing and I'm moving my lips while I'm typing.
All right, no problem. Yeah, the other thing I wanted to ask about is a few times when this meeting first started, and it always happens when I'm watching video of some sort, like a video, YouTube video online, or this presentation, something like that. My system freezes, just completely locks up, have to hard reboot. There's no way around it, nothing that predicts it. So I don't know if it's a hardware issue, or as something that might be preventable. I've not tried to run like a live CD to just sort of see if I can sort of discount software. Obviously, I could try that. It's not the most predictable thing. Like I can run for ages and ages and it never happens, or it just may, like today, happen 2 or 3 times. So I'm just curious if anyone has any ideas. My hardware platform is kind of odd. It's a ASRock motherboard and a Pentium G4500. I forget what the make of RAM is, but it's if anyone is aware of issues with any of those scenarios. Steve?
Well, first of all, do you want a high level or a newbie's comment? Because there are some people who are much more technically competent. But my approach to any problem like this, number one, is it occurring enough for me to bother with it? That's number one. Number two, and I say that because on rare occasion, once in 100 boots, my O-powered gaming computer simply goes to a dark screen and doesn't respond. And so I'm ignoring it right now. Number two, do you have multiple operating systems on this? If you do, is it something you can, as again with a live USB, either using different software, is it software responsive? And of course, if it's rare enough, that may require that you actually find a way of trying to automate and have it run enough times, starting a video, stopping a video, starting, without you having to sit there and to see whether you come back 5 hours later and it's frozen, or whether it'll go overnight and still not freeze 3 weeks out of the month.
My experience is, yeah, that's the trick. Is it's not super predictable. It's if it were super easy to create the problem, I probably would have done more troubleshooting. My notion is the things that create it most is when I'm actively mousing over a video screen, like that's displaying video, which I assume uses some sort of compression or whatever. And then I'll just be mousing over it, doing whatever, like in this presentation, muting, unmuting somebody, whatever I might do in here, reorganizing things. And then it just, it just dies.
What kind of graphics card are you using, and are you using any kind of offloading, like the decoder?
It's in the integrated graphics for this platform, which I think is a 630, but I really don't remember.
Those are usually pretty stable, but there's been Intel's QuickSync video codec thing is kind of iffy if you've got that enabled, which some distros do, but some don't. I kind of don't, not real sure on that, but it only some applications support it. Like I think Firefox or Chrome only support it in a Wayland session. If the moon's at 3/4 on a Tuesday, VLC and OBS support the video hardware decoder. So it's not everything, but that smells like some sort of bug in the driver. I wouldn't think the hardware, because those are on the CPU, embedded in the package itself. So I think you'd have more issues. Have you ran? I didn't catch if you could run like a MemTest 86 or if you runs.
I have in the past. That was
Okay.
when this has been actually happening for years. I don't use this computer that much anymore because this used to be my daily driver for work because I just did everything via Citrix. Now I don't. I have a piece of hardware and a work machine that I do all my work on. So this really is just used for, completely personal stuff, and watching videos usually happens on the phone. So it's usually this meeting where I see it most. And then if I'm watching YouTube for whatever reason, otherwise, or some other video on this desktop, which it doesn't happen often enough that, like I said, that it's demanded my attention. But I think I will go the route of looking into what the quick sync and the troubleshooting that I know I should have done already, which is basically just boot to a Windows Live or some other Linux Live and just see if there's something, if I can spend an entire day of active video watching and messing around and nothing happens, then perhaps that's a good data point.
There's a test program called Stress NG, and that you can spawn like a bunch of worker processes for stressing the CPU, the GPU, RAM. It can like fill up your memory. Sometimes that catches things. Like if you run it with a bunch of CPU hogs and it crashes the system, that may end up a problem with your CPU or your cooling. Yeah, so I would look into something like that, and that's in the Debian repos. I know it's in the Red Hat repos, so it should be in everything else too. But yeah, that just smells like a video card driver issue to me. So
Me too.
but usually the Intel stuff, granted, since about 2021, little insider information, I guess, is that Intel disbanded their opens during slightly after the pandemic. See you later, Dan. Intel disbanded their open source group and split them up into the rest of their hardware development teams, so they don't have a specific group that just focuses on Linux and BSD anymore. And so their support has really wavered. It's gotten a lot worse since then. But the P630 came out well before that happened, so it's usually pretty stable. But like there's Z graphics, their new webcams, the IPU6 webcams, sleep modes in Linux for the 11th and 12th gen and newer have been garbage. They've just been, yeah. So anyway, rant over.
All right. And that's that should be it for me. Has anyone else got anything before we disband?
No.
Nope. Hey, the ThinkPad still works great. 14-year-old ThinkPad's been sitting in a bin. Is still going. It's struggling. You can only do one thing on it if you have Jitsi open, but that's it's still working.
Sounds good.
Yeah. So, thanks for the presentation.
Yep.
I hope
Thanks,
everything
Dan.
works out. Hope everything works out with your health. So,
Thank you.
yep. See you guys later.
Thanks all.
Thanks,
Bye.
everyone. Bye, all.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody. See you in a month.